So today I want to talk about Stacey Wilkins, who has announced his decision to enter the transfer portal. And that has some consequences for Oklahoma, but let's start with the positives. Always want kids to enter the transfer portal if that's what they think they should do. I'm a big proponent of the transfer portal, just as I'm a big proponent of paying players. I'm a big proponent of pushing the game towards something more looking like professional, because I genuinely believe that the kids already do that. And to look at college football as another system in which we live in extends to that. That being said, right, as Stacey Wilkins said in his note, that being said, it's also a thing that the kids say a lot of times when they're trying to say all the good things up front, but it's almost like saying something, everything that comes before the bud is irrelevant, because the result is he's in the transfer portal, right? So you can take with that and do with that what you want. I thought it's also interesting that he announced his decision on Facebook a day before he announced his decision on Twitter, which tells you where he believes many of the people who are listening to him actually lie. Wilkins was a big part of the 2019 class. He was actually one of those dudes that was recruited by EJ Njomo-Ogar, who, you know, entered the transfer portal last year and has ended up at Missouri. Missouri is also looking something like they're going to come out of the SEC East and try to challenge Georgia for that title, because they added a really great defensive back coach in Aaron Fletcher, and he picked up a Caleb Evans and maybe picks up Allie Green. Both guys he coached at the University of Tulsa, both guys that had the potential to be All-Americans at corner. Also, consequence of the transfer portal. Coaches leave, and then players might want to go with those coaches. But what makes Stacey Wilkins so very interesting is he was projected as a potential starter at left tackle. This is at a dude that had been playing right tackle, right, in 2019. And then they moved him to left tackle coming back after he chose to opt out, returning with Kennedy Brooks and Jalen Redmond, among others. He bulked up to 6'6", 316 pounds. And Bill Bedenbaugh had said he's basically had the best spring of his life, and some of his, he had like 3 practices that Bedenbaugh said were some of his best practices. He also thought that was really interesting that he looked better at left tackle than he did at right tackle, because left tackle is a little bit different and a little bit more difficult to play. You're also talking about an offensive line that was buoyed, right, by guys like Adrian Ely, right? But you're looking at Wanya Morris coming in from Tennessee. You also have Andrew Rain, who might start at some center. Marquise Hayes, my goodness, Tyrese Robinson, and then whatever you're going to do with Eric Swenson. A guy that we don't even hear anything about anymore is Bray Walker, and that was a former 5-star dude that they picked up in the 2018 class. Perhaps he's still over there and they can make a run with him, but that's one of those things that I would expect to see really work itself out in August, especially now that we know the transfer portal is where Stacey Wilkins is going to end up on Monday. But once again, I feel like I need to tell you, just because you enter the transfer portal does not mean that you are transferring. Doesn't mean you're going to come out of the transfer portal either, as we're approaching 5,000 kids that have entered the transfer portal and have to find somewhere to go by July 1 if they want to be eligible to play later this year. Again, you're going to see dudes hit a critical mass in the transfer portal. You're going to see some guys that they knew were good, don't come out at great places. Another example of this might be dudes that choose to opt out early. As a matter of fact, I've had to answer this question over and over again about dudes that might opt out early and try to go to the NFL or quit playing a year of high school football earlier, like Jaden Blue did, so that he can concentrate on getting to the University of Texas. To which I will point you to Jamie Newman. Jamie Newman transfers from Wake Forest after what I thought was a really great year at Wake Forest. I called him store brand Cam Newton. I was excited to see him in Todd Monken's office at Georgia. And then he decides to opt out during the pandemic, goes into the NFL draft, goes undrafted, and has been cut and moved to waivers, right, by OTAs. It's just a cautionary tale, but also I hate it for Jamie Newman, who I think has a lot of talent and a lot of potential at that position. And it's one of the reasons why you might hear guys say, hey, perhaps transferring isn't all that great and should not be the thing that you're looking for. And as far as how this affects Oklahoma, I still think that this is the year for them to win the national championship. They are my favorite and pick to win the national championship. And I think the offensive line is going to be okay. I don't think it's going to be as great, because obviously you want depth there. And anytime you can provide more depth, you're going to be better, because injuries happen. But also, your one-on-ones are going to be that much better. It means your practices are going to be that much better. It means you're going to be in much better shape to take on the teams that can, quite frankly, stop you from winning a national championship in the Big 12 Conference. That's Iowa State. That's Kansas State, because Chris Kleiman is 2-0 against Oklahoma as head coach. Kansas State means 2-0 in his lifetime. And really, he's got more wins than Mike Gundy does at Oklahoma State against Lincoln Riley. Okay. And then you add in there that Texas is always going to be talented, so they're always going to be a threat. And then we'll see what the rest of the league really looks back like. I think that Texas Christian is going to be pretty good. But you want to have more guys on your roster, right? But this is also a really interesting and weird year, because everybody's going to have more guys on their roster, because we have that unprecedented year of eligibility. We're going to have guys that are in the 5th and 6th years, which leads me to this. Jeremiah Hall is going into year 5. Caleb Kelly is going into year 6. Those are 2 of your elder statesmen on this team. And these are guys that are going to be some pivotal players for Oklahoma, in the way that I think that the offensive line might be a little worse, but not that much worse. Because Rattler knows what he's got back there. You've got some outstanding wide receivers to get the ball out to earlier. And if you've got to go quick game to protect your offensive line, Lincoln Riley can do that while you ask them to run block. And remember, you got Kennedy Brooks and Eric Gray in the backfield along with Marcus Major. All 3 of those dudes ought to be pretty good going into this 2021 season. And then defensively, you return Jalen Redmond. You also got Isaiah Thomas, who's coming off of a magic year in which, if Mike Rose is not that dude, probably wins Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. Add to that a really solid secondary. I love Pat Fields, even if you don't. I really think that this is going to be a year in which we see Jaden Davis come on in a very big way. Jeremiah Cradell could break out now that Buki has transferred to Washington. And you're going to see more of this, I think, before you see it go away. The thing about Oklahoma, though, is I don't know why you wouldn't want to be on this team right now. I mean, Mike Woods is overjoyed to transfer from Arkansas to Oklahoma, and feels like Stacey Wilkins might end up in Arkansas LSU kind of situation, because Arkansas really wanted him, but Brad Davis has since taken the job at LSU, and we'll see what the new offensive line coach at Arkansas thinks of one Stacey Wilkins, because we'll find out pretty quick about the offers that dude is going to get. So the long story made shorter is, does this hurt Oklahoma? Yes. Does it hurt Oklahoma a lot? No. It's not hurting, like, I don't want to use a morbid example here, but there's a difference between breaking your arm, right, and getting a scratch on your arm. And right now, I don't see any breaks for Oklahoma. I see some scratches. I see some things that are going to leave some marks, but I don't see anything that's going to prevent you from being great. And this is the magic year for Oklahoma and Lincoln Riley and this team going forward. Again, I don't know why you wouldn't want to be on this team, and there's a reason why the Volunteers volunteered to transfer from Tennessee to Oklahoma. Eric Gray, Key Lawrence, and of course, Wanye Morris. All those dudes were go-getters. All those dudes can play. They're all blue-chip players, and everything's going to be copacetic at Oklahoma, all right? So chill out. Also, Trapper, this is for you. Doses.